Hello and welcome back to the Would You Give Me a Stagehand podcast. I'm Toby Patan and let's jump right in. So March 10th were the Oscars and I wanted to debrief a little bit about that. I watched the ceremony and there's some things I wanted to talk about. Some things I was excited about ahead of the ceremony was the fact that Lily Gladstone was the first Native American to be nominated for Best Actress, which is epic. Also, something else I thought was cool and a moment worth celebrating was Da'Vine Joy Randolph had her first nomination and first Oscar win for The Holdovers, which was dope. I also loved what Celine Song wore to the red carpet and was sad that Past Lives didn't win, but Past Lives was amazing. It was such a breath of fresh air watching it, and it was one of those films that really makes you relax and sink into yourself and make you contemplate a lot of complex topics, but it's done in such a beautiful artistic way. I know she's going to have a prolific career, especially as she was a first-time director and she was nominated for an Oscar with her first feature, which is extremely impressive. I was also very happy for all of the awards Poor Things won, because so many of my favorite films are directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, and it was just, again, another great movie-going experience when I watched it. I also thought it was really funny when Robert Downey Jr. won his award, and he said, "I would like to thank my terrible childhood and then the Academy," in that order. Hilarious. More hilarious than anything Jimmy Kimmel said the whole night. Moving on to today's guest, I speak with pop culture expert Ryan Syblis, a New York native and sociology major at Tufts University. I speak with him about how growing up in Jamaica impacted his pop cultural intake and perceptions of America, and I talked to him about the class he peer-taught as a student at Tufts, the Kardashians, the queens of American culture. Tune in for a discussion on race, gender, classism, capitalism, and power through a Kardashian lens, and how he plans to incorporate pop culture into the rest of his career in marketing. Thanks for listening. I don't know if you're able to listen to a little bit of the podcast, but this is just like an entertainment-based podcast, and I ask my friends, peers, professionals, people I know in TV and film to come on, and talk about how they've woven the entertainment industry into their careers. Mm-hmm. So, given you, a Tufts student and like pop cultural enthusiast, introduce yourself and talk about how and why you developed an interest in pop culture.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Ryan Syblis. I'm currently a senior. I am studying sociology and economics, two very distinct industries that don't necessarily lead to an interest in pop culture, but I like to say before I'm a student, I'm a child of pop culture. So I grew up in Jamaica, and we came to America when I was 9 years old, and learning American isms and the American ways of life was really hard. But I turned to TV and things like Tumblr and Google Plus was a thing when we were younger. I turned to those things to really look at how Americans operate and how they interact with each other. I really think that pop culture as an entity is really generative in how we translate what matters to us and how we make meaning and how we develop characters of ourselves. So I really appreciated how I learned to exist in America through watching what is happening in pop culture.
Wow, that's so funny that you led with that, because my parents are also immigrants. They're Nigerian immigrants. And I feel like me and my siblings and I also have that bond of how are we learning how to operate in American society and culture? Yeah. And it's through what we see on TV. And I was also kind of low-key, not a latchkey kid, but often left to my own devices, and we watched so much TV. We were also privileged enough to have cable, so we had every channel at our disposal. So it's kind of what you just kind of subconsciously absorbed.
Yeah, I feel like it's even interesting because in Jamaica we also did have cable, but we had like Disney and Nickelodeon and like PBS. So that was my only interaction with American culture, like Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and then Not So Raven and like Hannah Montana. I just thought that was America, which obviously that's like a subsect of it, but like the majority of America is not like that. So it was really just like watching a lot of TV shows and consuming a lot of media, like becoming who I am today.
Right. So true. All right, so talk about the class, the Kardashians, Queens of American Culture, and how it came to be.
Yes. So this class came to be because I was kind of trying to prove a point to one of my teachers. Sophomore year, I was taking a Sociology of Culture class, and that was a lot more theory-based about how culture is like disseminated and like translated throughout society. And we were doing a pop culture unit, and I was kind of saying that, oh, like we learn pop culture from TV. And my teacher was like, yes, definitely. And she kind of asked us, who do you think are like the pop culture icons? And I was saying, oh, Kim Kardashian. And she kind of shot it down as like, why would she be considered an icon? She was more thinking of like academics, basically. And then I pushed back and I was like, no, I feel like a lot of people look at Kim Kardashian as like a cultural icon. She's this entity in like monoculture at this point. And then I went further and I was like, Kylie Jenner, we are the Kylie Jenner generation. Like I vividly remember like sophomore year doing like the Kylie Jenner lip kit challenge. And she was like, she didn't get it, but everyone else in the class got it. And she kind of shut down the idea and was like, if you really want to talk about the Kardashians, make a class about it. And I was like, bet, that's what I'm going to do. It's exactly what I'm going to do. So that summer, I kind of thought about it a lot more. I really thought about if I wanted to teach a class. And then what solidified it was Kim Kardashian and Pete Davidson started dating. And
via SNL.
Yes. And that Sunday, I woke up and I wrote a rant on Twitter. No, not Twitter, sorry. I wrote a rant on my Instagram close friends about how Kim Kardashian's intentional marketing and like straying away from the Kanye image and like her hyper blackness and like her infamy in the black society, and her appropriation of white culture, if you will, or just like her morphing into a white woman, really shows how intentional they are about their marketing year by year, and like what their goals are. And everyone was like, whoa, do a podcast. And I was like, no, I'll teach a class. So it was really honestly just that. I was really interested in how that family basically runs American culture and how you don't have to be 20 and like chronically online to know who Kim Kardashian is. Like I can ask my dad, who is not online at all, like, do you know who Kim Kardashian is? And he will know yes. I just think they occupy such a space in like a cultural and then global zeitgeist that deserved a critical observation, I guess. Yeah.
So you use the show. Okay. Are we talking Keeping Up with the Kardashians or the rebranded Hulu The Kardashians?
Yeah.
Just for context.
So it stemmed out of the rebrand a little bit, because the rebrand was running. Like when I was teaching the class, there were new episodes every week. So like the homework would be watch the TV show, and then we can debrief in class. But as I was writing the like syllabus, I went back and watched all of Keeping Up, which is crazy. Like 20 seasons, it's like it's a lot of TV. And then every season was like a new idea. It was like, how does the family deal with addiction? How does it deal with like cheating and relationships and like money problems? I just found so much information in there that I think people overlook as like, it's reality TV. You can't really learn anything from it. But like children learned from reality TV. So I just wanted to like make a syllabus of like what is generative and what is informative about these people's lives. Yeah.
So you use the show as like a vehicle for discussing topics that are pretty, like academic, cultural appropriation, gender studies, feminist theory. So how did you like isolate that part of your brain that was like enjoying the show as a viewer, as a consumer, and then, step back and think, wait, I can approach these from like a pedagogical standpoint, and like how do you like merge those two parts of your brain to teach a class?
Yeah. I definitely think that it was me continuing to just be a sociology major in every facet of my life. I think anything I consume, I'm one of those people that overthink everything. Like I would always have a take, and then people are like, that's unnecessary. Like, what are you doing? So I don't think it was a stretch for me to come up with those connections. I more think it was a stretch to make it into a 13-week syllabus and like explain how, like I can just like post a sentence on Instagram like, Kim Kardashian is a feminist icon. How does that translate to actually teaching and like explaining what feminism is and like how that relates to Kim Kardashian? That was more the challenge of going through a lot of like cultural text, historical text, like pedagogy, thinking of what like ideology I wanted to like convey within the class and what messages I wanted to pursue in talking about. And also just what I'm comfortable with personally, because I'm a sociologist, I study economics. I can talk about like the branding and the marketing of the Kardashians, but I wouldn't necessarily be most comfortable talking about like how they intersect with like gender studies. But I had my advisor like give me some readings and it's like, hey, if you're gonna approach it that way, do this before and then talk to me and we can develop some questions and like guiding activities and stuff. So it was really a labor of love and a lot of reading and researching and how to like get all the ideas out of my brain.
Right. And so that kind of like brings me to like the aspect I wanted to know about more, which was the syllabus. So it's like, I don't know, if I'm not saying the Kardashians is your favorite show, but if I was going to teach a class on my favorite show, I'd be like, okay, where do I even begin? And like, I have all these sources I can pull from. I can pull from the show itself. I can pull from readings within the show, fan theories, blah, 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 blah. It's like when you were developing the syllabus, I was like reading through the text. I'm like, this is a lot of stuff. So were most of the texts from things you were like already familiar with or had like read, say, in like a sociology class, or were they authors you kind of sought out on your own, or both?
Yeah, it's definitely a mix of both. I think the foundational texts, like the Wendy Griswold reading, I think there's like a Pierre Bourdieu thing in there somewhere. I don't know.
Like, oh, this is like psychoanalytic theory.
Those were really from my social classes. So like the sociology of culture class, and I took a sociology of media and society. And that was really where like a lot of the theory came from. So a lot of like foundational, this is how people understand what culture is. This is what culture is defined as. And we really took like a week and a half to define what pop culture was before we like just said, oh, they're pop culture icons. Really going through the history and being like, this is like the sociological history of this. This is the anthropological studies. And I think it was like fun because my class, definitely the like composition was not a lot of theory-based people. It was just like people that followed them on Instagram. And I feel like it was interesting for them to think about pop culture in like a critical lens and how we can like look at theory through the lives of just like everyday people. Well, not everyday people, but like glamorized people in a way. It was definitely a mix of both. And also just like my own investigations through like YouTube video essays and their citations and stuff. I think that was really helpful. Also a lot of like Twitter archival research. It was definitely a mix of both.
So where does most of your pop culture, I guess, and news intake come from? Is it Twitter? Is it like television? Is it YouTube? Because like I feel like for me it leans more towards Twitter. But that's not necessarily like a good sign.
I definitely would say it's definitely Twitter. Every class I had to like check this by our supervisor. Every class I started with 30 minutes called PCHH, which was Pop Culture Happy Hour, where we would just debrief everything that happened in pop culture that week. And basically it was 3 slides of just screenshots of Twitter, like what's happening in Twitter. And in my everyday life, it's like this is not a good activity. The first app I open in the morning is Twitter, because I wake up pretty late, and it's like what happened at night in the morning, and then the next app is the Washington Post, yeah, and the Wall Street Journal, and then it's just like what is like the like critical world part, but what is also like the funny hee hee ha ha part that I should be aware of. And I think the balance of both is very tricky for some people, but I love it. Right. I don't know. Yeah.
What about that do you think entices you so much? Is it like the nuance, the like endless room for conversation and like twists and turns? Like I like too feel like I have like such a fascination with pop culture, but I'm not necessarily like evaluating why, you know what I mean? Because I think in America, it's like there's monoculture, there's things that bring us together, but then there are also different sects of, you know, there's fandom, there's like fan fiction, there's it just goes off in so many different directions. And so you mentioned like finding that balance between like the critique, kind of more like the academic environment, and the humor. And you're a pretty funny guy, so like, how did you keep, you know, earn that respect from your students and be like, okay, this is a class and you're actually getting credit and graded for it, while still being like, okay, this is a class I want people to leave and be like, they got something out of this, they enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it definitely took a minute for people to take the class seriously, because it, again, even just the nature of like reviewing pop culture that happens every spring, it's comedic. Like when I was teaching the class, that was the whole like Hailey Bieber, just that whole debacle, and like 10 minutes of class was devoted to debriefing what Selena Gomez said online, which is just, that's like comedy. But then we would like do a hard pivot. It's like, how do we talk about like gender dynamics in the relationships in the Kardashians? It took a while to manage how they take it seriously, but I think one of my favorite classes I taught was about like how they market their brands and their images, and just like listing all the different companies that they own. So it was that day was the trailer for I think season 3 of the new series, and Kylie was like, oh, we generate so much income for plastic surgery, but she feels bad that she's like a part of that problem. And it worked perfectly because that day we were talking about the like Kylie lip kit empire. So it was kind of poking fun at her saying, I've never had plastic surgery, but yet right now she's feeling bad that she perpetuates the idea that like students need plastic surgery to like feel like they have to fit in, and how she's like making money off her victimhood in a way. I don't want to say victimhood, but off this like narrative that she feels bad, but at the same time she's still like mass producing lip kits to like fit a certain image. Or there was like Courtney's switch from Poosh to Lemmy. We talked about that for a minute.
This is all going over my head. Like I don't know so much about the Kardashians.
Yeah, and then we talked about like Khloe Kardashian and her like, what is it, like True American Jeans or something, or her like jeans brand. Yeah, American or whatever it's called. Yeah, her like jeans brand, and we talked about like Food God and why he was there for a minute. Like he's just like a food critic. Food God? He's like one of their family friends that's just like always there, but he has like he just loves food and he changed his name to Food God. Random. It's just like the random like in and out of their lives of who do they market and why, and like at what point in time. Like Kim doing Skims, that makes sense, and how it started as like skimonos, and then the whole controversy because of cultural appropriation, and then like Japanese government officials like emailed it. Yeah, this is like all on the show. It's like a whole thing. They were like, don't use that word, like cultural appropriation, Kim. And then how she changed it, and how she kind of changed the way the world looks at her body. She went from like this infamous body within the Black community of like she's capitalizing on the Black gaze in a way of like, oh, that's Kim Kardashian, like everyone needs to look like her now, but now she's doing Skims, and it's like, how are you monetizing your infamy in a certain community to perpetuate the fact that women need to look a certain way? But then how is she flipping it to be empowering in a way? It's like Skims for everyone. But at the same time, she released like the new bra with like the like nipples out. And it's like, why is that comedy? Like, why is that funny, Kim? It was just, it was a lot of how do they navigate the world of making money, but also poking fun at themselves. But we know they're serious about it. Yeah.
That's so... My brain is going into so many different directions here, but it's specifically staying on race. Because when I think about it, you have on the one hand, how much a large part of their career had to do with cultural appropriation, but also a lot of their romantic partners are likewise Black. So it's like, then adds in another layer of colorism and like, you know, what legacy they're leaving for their Black children. And so I'm wondering if you like discuss that at all in your class and like, or what your personal thoughts about it are, because it's like, okay, if I was like Northwest, I'd be like, my dad's Kanye and my mom's Kim Kardashian, like, you know, it's so loaded and like their perception in the media are so loaded, but I'm this like little Black girl who I had no choice in the matter. I didn't consent to being on TV. I was just born into this family. And so it's like, how do you approach a topic such as that?
Yeah, we definitely spent a couple weeks talking about race, specifically what race they are or like what race they want to be. It like changes and switches and whatever. And also how their depictions of race relate to how they're raising their children. Things like, I don't remember which sister it was, but one of them posted a KKK joke about how, right, and that's not appropriate. That's not appropriate at all. And it's like, how do you grapple with the fact that you are Armenian woman, right? Main three, Kim, Chloe, Courtney, Armenian woman. But depending on who you ask, people think they're like white women. And in the zeitgeist of like American culture, based on their like status, privilege, power, those people do fit the description of white women. It's like, yeah, you have access to power, you have the wealth of resources, you can take a private jet and rent an island for your birthday during the coronavirus. Like, you ostensibly like are a white woman. But then you put yourself in proximity to Blackness, where the Black community is looking at you as this like icon of like, oh, Black men like Kim Kardashian, so I need to be like Kim Kardashian. Or these women are like, oh, Kim Kardashian is what a light-skinned Black woman should look like. But it's like, Kim Kardashian is not a Black woman. She's not a Black woman. So I think it's very interesting how her body as this like infamous cultural object even has become this like relevant figure of what Black women should look like or what they should like attain, like aspire to look like. And then her relationship with Kanye, very rocky, very contentious, but how she and Kanye elevated fashion, sure. How she and Kanye switched the music game, how they like had feuds with different people. I'm even thinking about like Taylor Swift, how that feud happened and how it was basically it trickled down to like you're Black, you like Kanye, or you're white, you like Taylor Swift. And it's like Kim Kardashian in the middle of that, it's like she's not a Black woman, but she's also not like a white woman, question mark.
Right, that's like the space she occupies. Further beyond that.
Yeah, and what motivated the class was the divorce from Kanye and her switch in Skims campaigns. She switched from like darker hues, darker colors, and then she did like a 90s bombshell ad where she had like super blonde hair. It was like a Beach Barbie themed ad, and I was like, oh, Kim Kardashian wants to be white again. Like she's doing like typical white features. It was just really weird in how she was aligning herself with whiteness more, like going out with Pete Davidson, and I don't want to say like achieving higher things is like particularly whiteness, but her interest in the law to be like, oh, my dad was a lawyer, I want to be a lawyer, and how she is capitalizing on like the single motherhood mindset is like, I'm such a good mom, I'm doing all these jobs, I'm running a business, like I'm an aspiring lawyer, and I'm dating Pete Davidson now. It's her audience changed in a way, or she attempted to change her audience, from this like infamous I'm married to Kanye West and all black people should love me or like fear me and infamy, whatever, to now I am this post-racial amorphous figure who is doing everything that a woman can be, and I'm the pinnacle of womanhood in America. That was really how we center our conversations of race, and looking at how they talk about themselves as racial figures and how they talk about their children as racial figures, because Kim Kardashian is raising a household of black children. Does Kim Kardashian understand what blackness is? Does she understand her relationship to blackness? How will her children view her relationship to blackness? Because her entire, I don't want to say her entire career, majority of her career is based on her proximity to black men. So how is that going to translate to her children when she's trying to teach them, this is how you be like an independent black woman in society, but you don't really know what that means, Kim. Yeah, I think it's very, very interesting how we're looking at North basically grow up on TikTok now, and how she's doing her edges, or like how she's doing her hair, she's playing with makeup, and Kim is like, oh, I'm teaching her all of these things, but like, who's teaching you that, Kim? Like, who are you like being intentional about curating an environment where your children can be themselves and not just like be products of your TV show?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so complex. Like, I would have
Yeah.
never thought about any of these layers from the
Mhm.
show. But there's so many different things I want to expand on.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out where
Where to go from there.
I mean, I think that you're so right. I mean, in the framing of this whole course, I think you can think of many, like, handfuls of time which, like, the Kardashians were the monoculture, like, especially during, like, the very publicized divorce between Kim and Kanye. I think, personally, I kind of saw the tides start to shift, like, more in, like, Kim's favor, because she was kind of viewed as, like, the savior, like, being the one to step up and, like, you know, protect her kids from their, like, mentally ill father who's was, in all honesty, displaying a lot of, like, erratic behavior just on, like, Twitter, the things he was saying, the things he was, like, constantly pushing back and being like, oh, North shouldn't be able to post on TikTok because she's too young, and so on and so forth. It kind of, like, again, I don't know, from your perspective, was this a branding thing? Was, like, it intentional? Or was it kind of, you know, not, like, altruistic, but, you know, like, devoid of any, like, okay, how is the media gonna receive me, like, for doing this, like, from Kim Kardashian's perspective? And I don't know, it's just, like, for me personally, it's like, I think, like, if my friend was going through divorce, you know, I would sympathize with them, and I'd be like, I would realize how hard that is, and it's such a common thing, but, like, since they're so, like, such, like, high profile celebrities, you're like, oh, do I feel bad for them? Do I feel bad for, like, what North's going through, and, like, the other kids? And it's like, I don't know, you kind of remember that they too are human and people, but it's also like, oh, you have so many resources.
Yes.
How is this really affecting you at the end of the day?
My response to that, at the end of the day, we need to remember that they can always choose not to share their lives. There are active things that you cannot record and not, like, share with the world. I'm thinking of, like, Kourtney and Travis's relationship. She did not want that on TV for, like, many years. And they only disclosed it when they were, like, in a very comfortable place. Kim didn't have to air her dirty laundry, so, like, if you want to put it that way, on TV. And try and portray herself as, like, I'm a great mother. The world is looking at me as this, like, defensive person because of Kanye's, like, erratic statements, or when he was going around colleges saying that slavery was a choice. on the show, she was like, I have to defend my husband to my children, but also understand that that is not the man I love anymore. And that entire narrative was a choice to put on TV. Like, yes, people want answers, but at the end of the day, you don't have to, like, share your lives. Like, you don't have to share every single intimate moment of your life. So it's really, I think about it as, like, what is the goal of this? And in my opinion, I don't want to, like, speak for her, but how we looked at it in class is if Kim Kardashian, this, like, billionaire, this, like, super privileged person is going through this, what does that mean for everyday people? What does that mean for people whose partners are struggling with, like, undiagnosed mental illness and they can't get out of a relationship? We see that Kim got out of the relationship, but it still followed her everywhere. So that was just, like, kind of what I took from that entire exchange and the public divorce. Eventually, they did take it offline, but I was just thinking, like, what is the goal of platforming Kanye's, like, erratic behavior? Like, yes, Kanye's not going to listen. Kanye's going to be Kanye.
Yeah.
But it's like, you don't have to respond to that. And I think based on their status in society, it was kind of like well, I'm Kim Kardashian, I have to respond. And that's just, like, the nature of what it is, unfortunately. Like, I'm someone whose life is very public, that I have to respond to all this because that is my ex-husband and, like, the father of my children. But I think the framing of it as I am now a single mother, I'm doing my best to manage an erratic husband, a divorce, moving on with my life, and, like, taking care of my children, I think that was very intentional in the way they, like, documented that whole process. Yeah.
I think for me, when I'm watching the Kardashians, like, the thing about it that is entertaining for me is the fact that it kind of almost seems like they know that they're just a cog in the machine, and yet they're just playing along because there's no... It will only make them more money, and more money means more power, and more power...
Yeah.
Everyone seeks that in a way. So I'm like, okay, there's the layer of reality TV where everything is produced. Beats are produced, conversations are produced, dialogue is produced, and it's edited, and it's marketed, and so on and so forth. But then again, these are real people in real life circumstances going through the everyday things. And so that kind of leads me back again to, like, why are they airing their dirty laundry? Is it kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy in that it's like, okay, they've already occupied such a space in society for so long, and it's afforded them whatever it's afforded them until now. Like, what would happen if they just all dropped off the face of the earth? Like, would media, like, what would happen to the fashion industry? What would happen to, like, TikTok as it's, like, what would happen? And do you think they're ever thinking of, like, maybe I should retire? Maybe I should just cash in the billions I've made and, like, try to live a peaceful life? Because for me, like, I want to go into the entertainment field, but I want to be behind the camera. Because I know that, like, with fame comes just, like, a lot of hard stuff. Like, your risk of, like, substance abuse increases, like, privacy decreases, safety, like, and when you're famous, you just kind of seek more fame. So it's like, I don't know. I just threw a lot at you, but I'm like, okay, what do you think makes someone seek spotlight? And, like, once they've experienced so many adverse effects from it, why do they keep seeking it? Why don't they just
stop?
Turn around. Like, she could probably, like, retire, become a lawyer, like, and effectively try to never be in the media again, but she's not choosing to do that.
Yeah.
And so why do you think so?
I think unfortunately they're at a level of attention where they can never escape the media now. I think if we look at, like, Rob as a case study, the brother, right.
I'm like, I had to think for a few
exactly.
Seconds. Doesn't start with a K. So
he effectively, like, disappeared. And that was, like, his choice. He's like, I don't want my life on television anymore. And he's just, like, still a part of the family, but no one's, like, checking up on Rob Kardashian. Like, no one's, like, searching, what's Rob doing today? I think at that time when he left, that would have been a perfect time for everyone else to, like, step back and kind of stop caring a little bit about them. But they're at a level in society where anything they do will cause press and will gain attention. I'm thinking, I don't remember what year, but Kim wore an all-black not suit, but like an all-black dress and like covered her face and her hair to the Met Gala. And people still knew it was Kim Kardashian. And it was kind of like her, like, I don't want to say like political statement, but her like statement, like, I'm not showing an ounce of skin right now, and you all know that it's me because of my body. And I think that is kind of how they move right now. It's like whatever they do is going to gain attention just because of who they are. And I think eventually they will leave media, and in my mind, there will be like a pre-Kardashians, post-Kardashians version of the internet. Because even with TikTok and like the rise of TikTok, the most popular TikTokers align themselves with the Kardashians. They were on the TV show. Like Addison Rae, Charlie, like even Charlie's like dating Landon now, Landon Barker. She's on the
Kardashians. Who that is.
Right. Courtney's stepson, basically. Right. Like TikTok is essentially it's all linked together.
It's like a psyop at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting how they're gonna continue being like integrated in society, even if they're not like directly involved in making culture anymore. I just think the memes that they've generated throughout time are consistently gonna stay. I think everyone's gonna remember when Kylie Jenner's Snapchat was like, Kylie's on my nizzle. It's like, really, Kylie? What are you doing? Or like 2016 Kylie when she was like driving around in like a Range Rover with like colored hair. Yeah. People are always going to remember that even if they're not actively producing new content.
Right.
Yeah.
And the amount of people who reference that scene where they were like jet skiing or something and she loses her earrings.
Yes.
And then one of them goes, people are dying.
People are dying. And that's it's real.
That's like a earworm now.
Yeah.
The amount of people that go, people are dying.
Yeah,
like,
people are dying. What? Yeah, I think it's like even this is such a pop culture tangent, but like right now, Tarte, do you know like Tarte, the Tarte trips? Okay, Tarte Cosmetics is like in Bora Bora, the same place that the Kardashians filmed that scene. Okay. And probably like 5 of their posts were like, gonna go find Kim's diamond earrings. And it's like, why are we still on this? Like, really, guys, it's just like a touchstone that everyone knows what that means. And I think there's just like so many things like that in their like lexicon of media production, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back more to your role as an instructor, when you're teaching a class about pop culture, it's more of a level playing field because like this class, you know, it'll have people of certain ages, of certain generations. So like you would say most of your students were Gen Z students. So they're coming in with a certain level of monoculture, yet everyone's perspective is different. Everyone comes from a different area. Everyone comes from a different class, you know, different politics. So that as well like informs your pop culture. So like knowing this, how did you like bring that knowledge into the class? And, you know, how do you approach teaching a class through the lens of pop culture when everyone's pop cultural interests are different?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that definitely was a concern of mine when I started taking the class started teaching the class because I feel like on paper, when you're signing up for the class about the Kardashians, I feel like it attracts a certain type of person with a certain type of like interaction and engagement with cultural history itself. But when I show up to class the first day, there's like 3 football players, there's a couple seniors, there's a couple juniors, there's like engineers in the class. I'm like, oh, this is not the like class composition that I expected. So our first assignment was I had everyone basically share the things that made them, share the things that made them who they are in terms of like their interactions with pop culture.
Right. The culture that made them.
Yeah, basically. Very much that. And I shared mine the first day. It was like Wattpad, Kick, Google Plus, Tumblr. Like it was very much, yeah. And I had a lot of people share that. Someone was like, he only knows the Kardashians because of his girlfriend, and he wanted to take the class to talk to his girlfriend more.
That's actually so sweet.
That was so sweet. And I was like, you're like 6'5" on the football team, and you're taking a class because you want to talk to your girlfriend. That is adorable.
Yeah, you did that.
I did, right? And I taught him something. So, yeah, it was very interesting navigating who has watched every single episode of the show and who has only interacted with them on Instagram, and trying to find the middle ground. I did that by, like, every class when we're doing a topic, I would find, like, a 10-minute clip of just, like, shorts from episodes of the show. So everyone has some context for what we're talking about. Yeah, and trying to make sure that everyone at least, like, sees how the show is produced and, like, sees how topics are, like, handled in the show. Yeah, I remember when we were talking about Scott Disick for some reason. Of course we're talking about Scott Disick. And I found like a 15-minute compilation of Scott's most unhinged moments. And there were some people in the class that did not know who Scott was. Like their only introduction to the Kardashians like right now when Scott's like not necessarily in the picture anymore. And then when you watch the video, they're like, oh, Scott's like integral in the story of the Kardashians. Like he's like a part of the family. And it was just like catching some people up on the history of the family and like what's actually going on so they can participate in class. Yeah, I found a lot of ways, or like tried to find a lot of ways in how to like bridge the gap between super fans, like critics of the show, and people that just like are not in tune at all with what's going on.
Would you say that there was like an even disbursement of like those three sections, or were there like more critics than like super fans, or were there more like, you know, dissenters than like supporters? Like how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I think there was, I would say it was a perfect balance. I like to call them Bravo fans. There were a lot of people that were Bravo heads in the class, and every day we would end up spiraling talking about like Salt Lake City or like New Jersey, or it was a lot of those people. And then the same time it was a lot of people that were like, I respect what Kim Kardashian does, but I don't think she deserves the status that she does, or like I don't think she deserves to be like this deified entity. And then we kind of had the chance to dissect why they thought that. And again, we had like a couple like football bros, like engineers that didn't know anything at all, except for like Kim Kardashian's pretty. My girlfriend knows her. I want to take this class. Yeah, I think it was a very good mix, and it produced a lot of good conversation and like a lot of generative information. Where a lot of like American-born people were like, "Why do you love them so much?" And I was like, they were my introduction to America, and like they taught me how an American family like not traditionally, but like basically is like what are the mechanisms, what are like the roles everyone plays, and they were like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. She just is someone that I had to live looking up to their beauty standards and like know that I will never reach that. So it was really a lot of people's personal baggage coming to class and just unpacking how they view themselves through TV and how their relationship to the Kardashians as social icons or social figures, how that's impacting how they view each other and how like the conversations move throughout class. Yeah.
Were there any like students' perspectives that you were like glaringly shocked by? You're like, oh, I did not expect that to come out of your mouth.
My most shocking moment in class was when someone said, someone was like, that Kylie was their favorite Kardashian. That's like I'm not. They were like, Kylie's my favorite Kardashian. And I was like, oh, that's like straight. That's I don't think I've ever met someone that dies on the hill that Kylie's the best Kardashian.
Okay.
And I was like, why? I was like, why? The reason made sense. They were like, oh, I just like growing up in high school, she was just like what all the pretty girls wanted to be. And I was like, so that's why she's your favorite? I just didn't really understand why Kylie was like this iconic figure to her to like aspire to look like. And I was like, but Kylie doesn't even know what she wants to look like. Like what are you like aspiring
She's
to?
another favorite.
Yeah, just like choose someone else. Yeah, it was really funny like learning who everyone's favorite was in class. Like, it's a weird mix of people.
And then I'm sure, like, teaching a class through the lens of something so wide as pop culture or coming in with people with different perspectives, there had to have been, like, perspectives that you're like, wow, no, I'm learning from you. And, like, I never thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, like, remember any of those, like, moments or, like, classes that they ended and you were like, wow, that was really fulfilling. Like, I feel like I learned something from my students.
Wow. Okay, let me think back. I would say, I think someone didn't share this in class, but in the reflection and homework, about seeing Courtney and Scott's relationship on TV and how the struggle with, like, addiction and quote unquote, like, broken homes, how that affected them growing up. And I've never looked at their relationship as like I can learn so much from this relationship, but it was reframing their relationship in a way of reconciliation, forgiveness, and now how do we move forward from the past. And the student was kind of explaining, like, in their romantic relationships, it's a lot of, like, yes, we have a turbulent history, but how do we reconcile and how do we, like, be friends and how do we learn to grow together? And I never thought to look at the Kardashians for, like, relationship advice ever. But they were kind of just saying that they respected how Courtney still had respect for Scott simply because they had kids together, and how you can forgive but not necessarily forget history and still create a future together. I never looked at the Kardashians like, oh wow, relationship goals.
Yeah.
My eyes were opened when they were like, yeah, you can learn a lot about relationships and, like, interpersonal relationships through them.
Right. Like, I feel like the whole thing with, like, media in general is that it's like a window into society. Kind of like you're seeing yourself reflected back at you. And that's kind of like where the critique comes out. You love to be like, oh, I would never do this, or I would never get nude on TV, or I would never. But it's like there are a lot of things that you're just not, like, self-analyzing, and maybe the call is coming from inside the house.
Yeah,
so it's, like, interesting to hear you say that, because going back to, like, what I said about, like, their status and their level of wealth and, like, notoriety, it is hard to view them as human. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I would never trade my life for any one of theirs. And so it's like, okay, is there a middle ground between, like, having a platform and being able to, like, exonerate people from their prison sentences and then also, like, perpetuating such harsh, like anti-feminism, colorism, like, appropriate, like, can you do that, like, without such a heavy, like, they took such a heavy-handed approach, and they continue to take such a heavy-handed approach, and it's like, at the end of the day, like, are the Kardashians, like, paving a way in, business and media for women that didn't exist, or are they digging women, like, a deeper hole in the ground for women and white women and black women? It's like, I don't know. Like, did you explore that in the class? Like, do you have an answer? Like,
whoa. I think it's a yes and answer. I think both things unfortunately exist at the same time. I think that a lot of people, or hopefully a lot of people, have more respect for women in business now, because of the Kardashians in some weird convoluted way. A lot of people are like, they don't have a job. They do nothing. They're famous for no reason. But their longevity proves that they do know what they're doing. And I think a lot of people now respect and understand the fact that they've remained relevant for so long, and that they've made successful businesses for so long. They've found a way to market being famous in a way that not many other people can do. Like, they've monetized their success into, like, multi-billion-dollar industries that not a lot of other celebrities can emulate. I'm thinking of, like, Paris Hilton. She's still an icon in pop culture to some regard, but she's not when people are like Paris and Kim, they don't immediately remember that Kim was like Paris's assistant. They're like,
Right.
oh, Kim Kardashian is friends with Paris Hilton. I think how you market and how you work your one connections and two your like misgivings or like your misfortunes in society, that definitely translates to like how you operate a business. And I think they are very intentional how they market their businesses and how they use their like gender politics in marketing their businesses. And I think that translates to people respecting them a little bit more, or hopefully respecting them a little bit more. But at the same time, I think that some of the ways they do it does harm, or like does greater harm than good. I think when you look at them, a lot of women think that they have to sell sex or sell some idea of sex in order to be successful, which is completely untrue. I think a lot of people watching them are like, I have to look a certain way or like even speak a certain way in order to reach the levels of success of the Kardashians, or I have to have like super weird politics to get to that position. So I definitely think they've created a space for more women in business and a lot of younger creators to like look up to how they've navigated the entertainment industry so far. But I also think for the everyday person, they have infused a weird, this is what you have to do to be successful type of energy. Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, it's kind of like a snake eating its own tail in a way.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, a
the
little bit.
cycle never ends. So just in being to wrap up here, I wanted to ask you about, how you plan to like carry on your passion and your knowledge and expertise in pop culture into your field of work, if you have that plan. Because, I like, as someone who basically got like a media studies degree, I'm like, bro, like, there's no way I'm going to get a media studies job right out of college.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I'm like interviewing my peers who are more established, who have experience in different like realms of like, okay, how did you get there? How are you like taking this knowledge that you have and like making it work for yourself and like hopefully, trying to carve out a career path for yourself? And I don't know what you plan on pursuing post grad, but like, is there like a media aspect to it, or like how do you see like media following you through the rest of your like professional career?
Yeah. I think I've been really lucky in the combination of like studying sociology and economics, because sociology is the study of culture basically, and the study of people that make culture. So I feel like any industry that I enter, I will eventually still be a sociologist at heart and still apply pop culture to my work. And in terms of economics, not a lot of people like think that pop culture generates a lot of economic, like, I don't know, people don't think it's like inherently related, I guess. But Kim Kardashian has like a venture capital, so like obviously it's like related. She's like a co-founder of a company or something now that I had to investigate this past summer, and I was like, oh, that's cool. These people don't know I taught a class about the Kardashians, huh? Yeah, it's just like weird stuff like that, or even seeing how someone's post can change the markets. How Elon Musk is like an entity in finance, but also a pop culture figure now, and how one tweet from him can like crash the market or like super. It's a lot. They intersect, and not a lot of people think about that. I just think that in any field that I enter, I'm still going to have in the back of my mind, how is this relating to culture, and how is this like being disseminated to like everyday people? I'm even thinking about like Oprah in Hawaii. Like, how is that a legal and government issue versus how did Twitter handle that?
Wait, what's the Oprah in Hawaii thing?
She when Hawaii was on fire, basically, Oprah posted this like crowdfunding, let's help Hawaii, but she owns a lot of land in Hawaii that she did not want to give up to locals, and people were like, hey, what are you doing? You own like half an island in Hawaii. And then the government was like, yeah, we really don't want outsiders like buying property anymore. She was like, well, I own it. so it's like how does that look different from like a political version versus like a pop culture Twitter is like eating you alive version. And I think I'm always gonna have that like dual mindset when I approach things. And I think it's helpful because it's like you have a creative solution to everything. Yeah, not a lot of people think like, oh, look for the Kardashians to like find an answer. But I think most likely they will have an answer. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I have this question that I ask like everyone I have on. And I can definitely adapt it to you. And so it's basically like when people consume your work or your content or for you, like your tweets, what do you want them to feel? Like what about your tone of voice like do you want to come across to like whoever's consuming like whatever the latest like Ryan opinion is about the Kardashians or this or that?
I would say I want people to, like when you don't like laugh out loud, but it's like, that's funny. That's
yeah.
I want like
a little
I want like a subtle like, wow, that was funny. Just like a LOL, not like a LMAO. It's like that was funny. I kind of want people to constantly, even in person, like interact with me like that. Don't take anything I'm ever saying like super serious. Outside of like professional work, anything I'm like tweeting or like posting, that's a joke. And that's like, it's like, no, I'm not being serious. This does not hold up in court. It's Twitter. Come on now. Yeah, I just want people to look at the brevity. I mean, the levity. What?
Both.
Yeah. The lightheartedness in any situation. I feel like there's a joke to be made of anything. Well, almost anything.
Right.
Yeah, and I hope that like comes through how I like carry myself. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Would You Give Me a Stagehand podcast. On the next episode, I speak with my friend, an amazing cinematographer and photographer, Gianni, about their thesis film, Moving Room, that I was able to be a gaffer on and had such an amazing time. We talk about their process in making the film and get into the nitty-gritty of what went into writing and directing such an amazing but personal, heartfelt project. Thanks for listening.